went to Black Friday. Oh, all these smart people. Oh, one person. Well, I went out. We stayed away from all the big places. We went to PetSmart, went to Lowe's, went to Staples, went to Big Lots. Hardly anybody was there. They were all apparently trampling on each other at Walmart. I don't know. But it's one of those things when I think about the idea of random acts of kindness, which is the topic I was given for this sermon. And we get to this gift-giving part of our year, and we get a little crazy because we want to express our feelings of love. We want to express our feelings of obligation. We want to not be embarrassed because we didn't give as nice a gift to our sister-in-law as she gave to us. And I think that we concentrate a little too much on this as being the gift-giving time of year. We can do things that are important to people all the time, and we don't have to give gifts of a physical nature. We all know that. Every one of us here knows about the little things you can do for somebody. Hold a door open for someone, remember to send them a card when they're sick, all these little things. But why do they become difficult to do? Because they do become difficult. And it gets easier to go out and buy a gift and give it to somebody once a year or on their birthday or whenever. And I thought about this and I realized, well, these random acts of kindness, these little gifts that we give, cost us in a different way. They cost us in time. They cost us in energy. They cost us in attention. They cost us in thought. They cost us in pieces of our life. We're going out to work, we're earning the money, we're doing that for a plethora of reasons, and if we take some of that and buy a gift, it doesn't really set itself apart as much as when you stop and say, well, I'm going to go over to Myrna's house and help her out this afternoon. Or I'm going to, I don't know. I will let this person in ahead of me in traffic. That does take time and thought. It's not easy. When we think of giving that way, we're literally, I really think of it as you have this much life. Whatever period of life you're given, you don't know how big it is, how small it is. And you take a little piece of it and you hand it to somebody. That's huge. And another thing, too, is when accepting gifts, which there are many people who are not very good at accepting gifts. I don't know if any of these people in this room would be like that, or if you even know anybody like that, but I've met a few. And it's very difficult for them to take that gift of your life because even though it's 10 minutes, it's huge. It's a giant thing. Well, and one of the gifts that I think is most important, and this is a subject that I've talked about before, one of the gifts that I think is hugely important to people, and we don't give it enough, is the gift of listening. And I don't mean just, going to coffee and chatting with your girlfriend or going to the ball game and, yelling back and forth, whatever. I'm talking about really listening. Think about a time, a situation, a moment when you felt someone else was really listening to you. Now think about a time when you really, really deeply listened to another person. How many times have you felt like no one was listening? Listening is often characterized as being passive. I don't agree with that. Hearing is passive. It happens as long as our ears, nerves, and brains operate correctly. Listening, really listening, is very active. It takes concentration. It takes effort. It can be exhausting. Listening is a skill. Listening takes practice. Now, what's the difference, really, between hearing and listening? Hearing is sound waves hitting the apparatus of the ear, and those vibrations being transduced to nerve impulses which are perceived in the brain. That's all you have to do to hear. Listening is what happens after we hear, after we perceive communication. It is an activity of the mind, and there are a variety of techniques used to improve communication and understanding, among other things. Listening is something we're not taught how to do. We're taught to read, we're taught to write, we're taught to speak. How many of you have taken speech classes in school? How many of you have ever taken a listening class? I've taken one, and it changed everything I thought about communication. So I want to talk a little bit about how do you give this gift of listening to someone else. First, you have to quiet your internal dialogue. You have to shut yourself up. This is not easy. All of us have this little voice in the back of our head that's saying, oh, I've got to make this meeting, and did I remember to do, I've got to remember to do the laundry, I didn't, just a million things. And then you also get the little voice that's going, will she ever shut up? I want to tell her about this thing that I did, and I don't care about her stupid dog, and why doesn't she have, that whole internal, and it's very difficult. It takes effort to quiet that. It's kind of like meditating. You have to focus your attention on the other person, not just their words, but the tone of their voice, their facial expressions, their body language, the gestures they're using. And you have to attend to what these things are telling you. Scientists have done studies that suggest between 60 and 70% of human communication takes place non-verbally. That's what makes email so problematic. Even telephone conversations, you can get into misunderstandings because you're missing over half the conversation, which is why we have emoticons. We're trying to replace that. Listening also requires paraphrasing and repeating back in non-judgmental terms what the person has said to confirm or correct. Did I really hear? Did I really perceive? Did I really understand what you said? I'll repeat it back to you, and you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong. And you can ask questions based on that, which helps the other person talk more. And the most difficult part of the whole listening process is allowing silence. Silence makes people nervous. The teacher I had in my listening course way back at Rollins College described the act of listening as giving another person air to breathe. You are taking time out of your life to turn off your own stuff and give your attention to this other person. You don't have to solve any problems for them. You don't have to necessarily answer their questions. Sometimes all you have to do is sit quietly and responsively listen. And the other person will talk themselves into their own solution, or their emotions will just lift and they'll feel better. And what kind of a gift is that to give to somebody? How can you ever put a gift wrap on that? You can't get a gift card for it. But we don't do it that often. Why? Because it's hard. It is hard. I am one of the worst listeners because I have to work at it. I feel like the worst listener because I have to work at it. And it's quieting the internal dialogue is the hardest part. My brain is always telling me things. It's always chatter, chatter, chatter. I'm always critiquing, looking for the lint on your shirt. Oh, yes, you got lint, I will find it. And it will distract me from what you're saying. It's hard to focus on what someone else says without feeling the impulse or even the demand to instantly respond. Part of that's our culture. We expect, are you listening to me? Why don't you answer me? We are called on to respond, and we feel the need to be able to answer as soon as the other person pauses to draw a breath. The conversational football. How many of you ever tried to grab that at a party? There's 4 people, and they're all talking, and they all talk louder and faster than you do. And you'd like to say something too, but no one will shut up long enough for you to get a word in. We're not listening, we're talking. Sometimes what the other person says will trigger a reaction in us. Our own emotions will rise up and shape our response, even if what that person said has no relation to the particular memory we had triggered or the emotion that we're feeling. We're humans. We got stuff. And it's really easy for someone to, with a tone of voice, the way their eyes move. I mean, there's parents in here. What does this mean? That's a whole lot of communication. No one said anything. Sometimes we listen to the first 3 or 4 words another person says, and then we've been formulating what we're going to say next, which means we miss the rest of what they are going to say. We may assume we already know what they mean, but we do not know. We assume that we know what they want us to say. But we're doing this based on the first 3 or 4 words, and then we've shut it off. Why don't we listen? Why don't we listen? silence makes people nervous. In our society, silence after a spate of speech can be seen as a negative judgment. You're offended. You've said something stupid. You've shocked people. That silence after you've said something in a crowd, that party thing where you say something, the whole room goes silent, and you begin to look for something to crawl underneath. That's what silence means in our society. We can't just let silence mean silence. We fear it. We rush to fill it in. There are other obstacles too. We don't have time. Feel too busy, feel too rushed, got too many things in our own minds. We're trying to do 2 or 3 or 4 things at once. We try to squeeze all that listening in. It's a juggling act, which means we aren't listening at all. We can show others we aren't listening with our body language, our tone of voice, our word choice, and where our eyes are looking when we talk. If I'm looking directly at Linda, she's probably got a pretty good idea that if she talks and I keep my eyes on her, I'll be hearing her. But if I'm staring over at Susan while she's talking to me, what's the image she's getting? And we do this without thinking. I also do this. I'm one of these people who, like this all the time. My eyes are never still. And when I'm really listening, I have to concentrate, which makes me look a little peculiar and people think I'm planning their murder or something, but I'm really not that dangerous. Listening carefully, fully, deeply is a huge gift. It's a piece of your life that you can hand to another person. You can do this for a stranger. You can do this for your best friend. The hardest people it is to do it for often are people you love. It can be extremely hard to listen to someone that you love because you want to fix everything for them. You want to make it all better. Probably one of the easiest persons to listen to is someone you don't like. And it's an amazing thing when you actually sit down and listen to someone who you don't like, you even hate, you wish they'd fall down a hole and die. But you sit and give them the gift of listening. I did this once. I found this out at the age of 14. There was a girl in one of my classes, and she and I physically fought regularly. I mean, knock down, drag out, pull, hair, scream. And one afternoon, we were in one of the rooms in the band building. And we were just sitting there, and we had nothing particular to fight about at that moment. And she started talking to me. And I started listening to her because I really didn't feel like fighting with her that day. And I listened to her, literally just sat and listened to her for half an hour. Now, she and I did not become best friends, but we ceased to fight. We ceased to fight. She ceased getting her friends to beat up on me, and I ceased getting my friends to beat up on her. We left each other alone. And we would say hi, just, totally neutral people, just from that half hour of listening. And it wasn't that I did anything in particular, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just I didn't feel like getting punched. So it was easier just to be quiet and to pay attention. There was nothing else in the room. And that was my first lesson in listening. And it's become a fascination for me ever since. When we deny ourselves the chance to give the gift, it's a little kindness. It's something you can do anytime. You can turn and listen to someone in line at the grocery store. You can do it at the line in the DMV. It's probably a really good time because it'll keep you from hurting people. And it's an effort. It's hard. I'll never say that listening is an easy thing to do, because it's not. It can be painful. It can be exhausting. I mean, you're listening to me here, and I'm pretty sure all of you are thinking, when's she going to be done? I'd go get something to eat, coffee. But you're giving me a gift by listening to me. You are giving me some time of your life, your attention. You're letting me say these things that are on my mind, and I am grateful for it, and I thank you for it.